The ballroom was drowning in white. White roses, white silk drapes, white candles flickering like fragile promises. Clara Matthews stood perfectly still at the center of it all, her clipboard resting against her chest as though it could steady her breathing. Every detail was flawless, painstakingly planned, adjusted, reimagined, and perfected by her hands. This wedding was her masterpiece. Yet her heart beat unevenly, a strange tightness coiling around her ribs. Final check, she announced, her voice calm, professional, practiced. The bride walks in 30 seconds after the orchestra begins. Lighting stays warm. No sudden flashes. She had said the same words at dozens of weddings. Hundreds even, but today something felt wrong. The violinist lifted his bow. The doors at the far end of the hall opened slightly. Clara turned, expecting to see the groom take his place. He stepped forward. Tall, familiar, devastatingly familiar. Her breath left her body in a silent gasp. No. Her mind rejected the sight before her heart could catch up. The man walking toward the altar, straightening his cufflinks, lips curved into a confident smile, was not a stranger. He was not a client she had only exchanged emails with. He was not just another groom. He was Evan Brooks, the man she had loved for 5 years. The man who had held her in the dark and promised, soon. I promise. Next year, Claire. The man who disappeared. The clipboard slipped from her fingers and hit the marble floor with a sharp crack that echoed louder than the orchestra. No one noticed. They were all too focused on the groom. Clara's vision blurred. Her lungs burned as though the air had been sucked from the room. She staggered back a step, then another, heels scraping against the polished floor. This wasn't possible. She had planned this wedding for months. The groom's name had been shortened on contracts. E. Brooks. She had never questioned it. Never imagined it. Because why would she? Why would the man who shattered her heart trust her to plan his wedding? Her chest tightened painfully as Evan reached the altar and turned, turning fully, finally, until his eyes found hers. Their gazes locked. His smile faltered. Just for a second. That was all it took. The room tilted violently, white blurring into blinding nothingness. Clara tried to speak, tried to breathe, tried to step away. But the world collapsed inward. And then, darkness. She woke to beeping. Slow, steady, relentless. Her eyelids felt heavy, her body numb. When she tried to move, a sharp ache pulsed through her temples. Miss Matthew? A gentle voice asked. Hospital. The smell of antiseptic confirmed it. A nurse leaned over her, eyes kind, voice calm. You fainted at the venue. Severe stress. Dehydration. Emotional shock. Emotional shock. Clara let out a hollow laugh that turned into a sob halfway through. Emotional shock didn't begin to describe it. Memories rushed in white roses, Evan's face, the vows she hadn't heard but could imagine. The life he promised her, handed to someone else. Tears slid silently into her hair. How long? She whispered. A few hours, the nurse replied softly. Your friend said you've been through a lot. Clara stared at the ceiling, at the cracks she'd never noticed before. A lot. That night, when the room finally emptied and silence settled, she understood something terrifying. She had built her life around love stories. She had helped strangers begin forever. And yet, her own heart lay in ruins, betrayed in the cruelest way possible. She didn't cry loudly. She didn't scream. She simply closed her eyes and made a decision that would change everything. When she left this hospital, she would leave Chicago. She would leave the past. And she would never again stand in a room full of white roses believing love couldn't hurt her. Before Clara Matthew learned how easily love could shatter, she believed in it with her whole heart. She grew up on the south side of Chicago, in a narrow brick house where winters were harsh and summers hummed with distant sirens and children's laughter. Her mother, Lorraine Matthew, was a woman shaped by disappointment but never hardened by it. Though her marriage had ended when Clara was young, Lorraine still folded laundry while watching romantic movies, still sighed at proposals, still said, "Love is risky, but it's worth trying." Clara absorbed those words like scripture. She believed love was something you fought for, waited for, protected. Even when it hurt. As a child, she organized pretend weddings for her dolls, using bedsheets as veils and scribbled vows on scraps of paper. She loved the idea that two people could choose each other in front of the world and mean it. By the time she entered college, her dream had shape and structure. Event management. Design. Coordination. She wanted to create moments people remembered forever. Wedding planning wasn't just a career. It was faith. After graduating, Clara worked her way up, long nights, unreasonable clients, endless revisions. But she never complained. Every successful wedding felt like a quiet victory. Proof that love, when done right, could endure. That was when Evan Brooks walked into her life. They met at a friend's engagement party. He was charming without trying, confident without arrogance. When he smiled at her, it felt intentional, like he truly saw her. "You're the planner, right?" he asked that night. She laughed. "Guilty." He told her he admired what she did, bringing people's dreams to life. By the end of the evening, they were sitting in a quiet corner, talking like they'd known each other for years. Their first date lasted 6 hours. Their second ended with promises. And just like that, Evan became her world. 5 years. 5 years of shared apartments, inside jokes, lazy Sundays, and whispered dreams. Evan talked about marriage often not in grand gestures, but in casual certainty. "When we have kids, our house will need a big kitchen. I want our wedding to be simple. Meaningful." Every time he said our, Clara's heart softened. She trusted him. So when the proposals didn't come, she didn't push. When he said he wasn't ready yet, she waited. Love, she believed, wasn't a race. Then one day, Evan started pulling away. Texts became shorter. Calls went unanswered. Work became his constant excuse. When she asked if something was wrong, he smiled and kissed her forehead. "You worry too much, Clara." 2 weeks later, he was gone. No fight.no explanation.no goodbye. She searched for him everywhere: friends, social media, mutual acquaintances. He vanished like he'd never existed. Clara blamed herself. She wondered if she had loved too much, waited too patiently, trusted too blindly. And then the email arrived. A prestigious client seeking a discreet wedding planner. The pay was generous. The requests are specific. The groom is private. She took the job. Because work was the only thing that still made sense. The hospital room was quiet as these memories flooded back. Clara turned her face toward the window, watching snow drift slowly past the glass. Somewhere out there, Evan was living a life that no longer included her. And worse, he had let her plan the ending. Her chest tightened. When she finally closed her eyes, it wasn't sleep that claimed her, but resolve. She could not stay in a city where every street corner reminded her of what she'd lost. Chicago had taken enough from her. When she left the hospital 3 days later, her bags were packed. Her heart was bruised, but it was still beating. And for the first time in her life, Clara Matthew was ready to run, not from love, but from the ruins it had left behind. Clara Matthew bought the ticket at 3:17 in the morning. She sat alone at her kitchen table, still wearing the oversized hoodie she'd slept in at the hospital, the glow from her laptop casting pale shadows across the walls. The apartment was silent, no hum of Evan's late-night music, no familiar footsteps, no shared laughter. Just emptiness. Her finger hovered over the keyboard as the destination blinked on the screen. Seoul, South Korea. She didn't know anyone there. She didn't speak the language beyond a few polite phrases. But something about the distance felt necessary. If she stayed, the city would swallow her whole, every cafe a memory, every wedding invitation a wound. She needed somewhere far enough that her past couldn't follow. With a shaky breath, she clicked confirm purchase. The confirmation email chimed softly. It felt final. Telling her mother was harder. Lorraine Matthew listened quietly as Clara explained, her voice calm, words carefully chosen, pain hidden behind practicality. "I just need a fresh start," Clara said. "Somewhere new." Lorraine reached across the table, covering Clara's trembling hand with her own. "Running won't fix a broken heart." "I know," Clara whispered. "But staying will break it more." They hugged for a long time, the kind of embrace that carried years of love and unspoken fear. Lorraine slipped a small silver necklace into Clara's palm before she left. "For protection," she said softly. "And courage." The flight was long. Clara stared out the window as the city lights of Chicago faded beneath the clouds. She thought of Evan, of all the things she never got to say. Anger simmered beneath her sadness now, sharper and more dangerous. He let me plan his wedding. The thought made her jaw tighten. By the time the plane landed, exhaustion had replaced the ache. Incheon International Airport was bright and bustling, filled with languages she didn't understand and faces that didn't recognize her pain. For the first time in years, Clara was completely anonymous. And completely alone. It was late when she stepped outside, the night air cool against her skin. She adjusted her coat and scanned the curb for a taxi, dragging her suitcase behind her. A black car pulled up. The driver stepped out. He was tall, dressed simply in a dark coat and slacks. His hair was neatly styled, his expression calm but observant. He opened the trunk for her before she could speak. "Taxi?" she asked hesitantly. He nodded. Yes. She slid into the back seat, relief washing over her. As the car pulled away, the city lights blurred past the window. Clara sighed, exhaustion finally catching up to her. You just get here? The driver asked, glancing at her in the mirror. Tonight, she said. New country. New life. He smiled faintly. Running away? She met his gaze. Something about his eyes, steady, kind, made her answer honestly. Trying to survive. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was understanding. They talked the rest of the ride. About Chicago. About Seoul. About heartbreak and hope. She told him about her work, about weddings and love stories she no longer trusted. When they arrived at her apartment, she reached for her wallet. He shook his head. No charge. She frowned. That's not how taxis work. He smiled, a quiet curve of his lips. Then consider it a welcome gift. Before she could protest, he added, if I ever need a wedding planner, I'll call you. She laughed softly, thinking it was just polite conversation. I'll be waiting. As she stepped out of the car, she didn't notice the way he watched her disappear into the building or the way his phone vibrated with messages marked Park Group, urgent. Because Clara Matthew didn't know she had just met Sujin Park. And Sujin Park didn't know that the woman who mistook him for a taxi driver would become the greatest risk he would ever take. Sujin Park watched the building long after Clara disappeared inside. The car idled quietly beneath the street lamp, its soft hum barely audible over the distant city noise. He rested his hands on the steering wheel, unmoving, his reflection staring back at him from the windshield. Composed, unreadable, exactly how the world expected him to be. But inside something had shifted. He hadn't planned to drive himself that night. The Park Group's board meeting had ended late, tempers flaring, voices sharp with expectation. As the only heir to one of Korea's most powerful conglomerates, Sujin lived under constant scrutiny, every step monitored, every decision weighed for profit and image. Tonight he had needed air. So he slipped away from the chauffeur, took the car, and drove aimlessly through the city like a man without a name. Then she had flagged him down. A woman with tired eyes, dragging a suitcase like it weighed more than it should. She had looked lost, not in the careless way of tourists, but in the quiet way of someone who had been broken and was still standing. When she asked if he was a taxi, he should have corrected her. Instead he said yes. For once, Sujin Park wanted to be ordinary. Back at his penthouse, the silence felt louder than usual. Sujin loosened his tie, the city skyline stretching endlessly beyond the glass walls. His phone buzzed again. Secretary Han. Chairman is expecting you tomorrow morning. Important. He ignored it. His thoughts were still on Clara, on the way her voice softened when she spoke about love, on the bitterness that crept in when she talked about betrayal. She believed in forever. Even after it had betrayed her. That kind of heart was rare. And dangerous. Across the city, Clara lay awake in her unfamiliar apartment, staring at the ceiling. The ride replayed in her mind, the driver's calm voice, the unexpected warmth of the conversation, the strange sense of being understood by a stranger. If I ever need a wedding planner, I'll call you. She snorted softly into the darkness. Men always said things they didn't mean. She rolled onto her side and closed her eyes, unaware that for the first time in weeks, she had fallen asleep without crying. Days passed. Clara threw herself into work, learning the city, navigating cultural differences, rebuilding her business from scratch. It was harder than she expected, but the challenge kept her mind busy. Then one afternoon her phone rang. A known number. She almost didn't answer. Hello, she said cautiously. It's Sujin, the voice said. From the taxi. She froze. You remembered me? Yes, he replied simply. I told you I would. They met for coffee. Then dinner. Then long walks through the city where he listened more than he spoke. Sujin never mentioned his wealth, never corrected her assumption. He dressed simply, lived modestly, at least that's what he let her see. For Sujin it was effortless to hide behind normalcy. For Clara it was effortless to feel safe around him. Weeks turned into months. Months into years. They didn't rush. Sujin became a constant checking on her, encouraging her business, celebrating her small victories. When she doubted herself, he reminded her of her worth. And somewhere along the way his admiration became something deeper. For 3 years he watched her grow stronger, softer, wiser. He fell in love quietly, carefully, knowing her heart was fragile. And when he noticed the way she lingered a little longer in conversations, the way her smile changed when he walked into a room, the way her eyes searched for him without realizing it, he knew. The timing was finally right. Sujin Park was ready to take a risk. And Clara Matthew was about to step into a story she never saw coming. 3 years was a long time to fall in love with someone who didn't know it. Soojin Park learned that truth in small, ordinary moments. In the way Clara always ordered her coffee the same way, then pretended she didn't. In the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous, and the way her laughter softened the sharp edges of his world. He never rushed her. After what she had endured, rushing would have felt cruel. Instead, he stayed steady and present. He showed up to her small office openings, brought food when she worked late, listened when she spoke about clients who made impossible demands. And when she talked about love, hesitant, bruised, but still hopeful, he listened most of all. "I used to think love was loud," Clara admitted one evening as they walked along the Han River. "Big gestures. Promises. Forever said out loud." She paused, staring at the reflection of city lights dancing on the water. "Now I think love should be quiet. Consistent." Soojin stopped walking. He turned to her, heart pounding. "Then you were loving the wrong way before." She looked up at him, surprised. He held her gaze for a second longer than necessary before smiling gently and continuing on. Clara followed, unaware that his hands were shaking. Clara didn't notice when her feelings changed. There was no single moment. No dramatic realization. Just comfort. She found herself telling Soojin things she never told anyone else. She trusted him with her fears, her doubts, the pieces of her past she usually kept hidden. Sometimes she wondered what it would be like to love him. Then fear would rise quickly, sharp and cold, and she would push the thought away. She had already lost too much. Soojin noticed everything. The way her laughter softened when it was just the two of them, the way she leaned into his shoulder during quiet moments, the way she hesitated whenever conversations drifted toward relationships. He knew she was afraid, and he knew he could wait. But patience, he learned, didn't make desire disappear. It only sharpened it. The night everything shifted came unexpectedly. They were celebrating Clara's biggest project, yet a successful international wedding that brought her recognition across Seoul. They sat in a quiet restaurant, candles flickering between them. "You did this," Soojin said proudly. "You rebuilt everything." Clara smiled, but her eyes shimmered. "I couldn't have done it without you." The words hung between them. For a moment, Soojin considered telling her the truth about his feelings, about who he really was. But fear stopped him. Not of rejection. Of breaking the fragile peace they had built. So instead he raised his glass. To new beginnings. Clara lifted hers slowly. To trust. Their glasses clinked softly. That night, as he walked her home, the space between them felt charged, alive with everything unsaid. At her door, she turned to face him. "Soojin," she said quietly, "do you ever get tired of waiting?" He met her eyes. "Not if it's worth it." Her breath caught. For the first time in 3 years, she didn't step away immediately. And for the first time, Soojin allowed himself to hope. Soojin Park stared at his phone long after the screen went dark. The decision he was about to make could change everything: his relationship with Clara, his carefully controlled life, and the expectations placed on him since birth. For 3 years he had hidden behind normalcy. For 3 years he had watched her heal, grow, and smile again. For 3 years he had loved her in silence. But silence had limits. The board wanted him married. Not for love, never for love, but for legacy, alliances, appearances. The Park family name demanded stability, a wife suitable for society pages and shareholders. And Soojin had agreed. On one condition. When Clara's phone rang the next morning, she was reviewing floral samples. A known number. She frowned, then answered. "Hello, this is Clara Matthew." "Good morning," Soojin said, his voice calm, professional. "Different. I'm calling regarding your wedding planning services." Her pen paused mid-air. "Soojin?" "Yes," he replied. "But today I'm a client." Her chest tightened, disappointment rising before she could stop it. "You're getting married?" she asked carefully. "Yes." The word felt heavy on his tongue. There was a pause on the line long enough for him to hear her steady her breathing. "I see," she said softly. "Congratulations." Professional. Controlled. The Clara he admired and feared losing. "I'd like you to plan it," he continued. "If you're willing." She almost said no. Almost. But this was her job. Her life. And she had promised herself she wouldn't let personal feelings interfere with her work again. "I'll send my availability," she replied. "We can discuss details." "Thank you," he said. Then quietly, "It means a lot." When the call ended, Clara sat back in her chair, heart pounding. Why did it feel like goodbye? They met later that week. This time, Soojin arrived in a tailored suit, posture more formal, eyes guarded. Clara noticed immediately. Client mode, she reminded herself. So, she said, opening her notebook, tell me about your fiancé. He hesitated just a fraction of a second. She's an old friend, he said. We grew up together. Clara nodded, scribbling notes. What kind of wedding does she want? He smiled faintly. Simple. Elegant. Meaningful. Her fingers stilled. Those were her words. She forced herself to keep writing. After the meeting, Clara walked home alone. The city felt different, colder, sharper. She told herself she was imagining it, that she was being foolish. Still, as she lay in bed that night, one question refused to leave her mind. Why had he chosen her? Sujin met Haerin the next day. She sat across from him in a quiet lounge, legs crossed, expression knowing. You finally decided, she said. Yes, he replied. Are you still willing? Haerin sighed softly. You owe me for this. I know. She studied him for a long moment. Does she know? No. Will you tell her? He looked away. When the time is right. Haerin shook her head, half amused, half wary. You're playing a dangerous game, Sujin. I know, he said again, but he was already too deep to turn back. Clara met Haerin on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. They sat in a private room at a minimalist cafe overlooking a narrow street lined with cherry trees just beginning to bud. Haerin arrived precisely on time, dressed in muted elegance, her posture flawless, her smile polite but distant. So, Haerin said, folding her hands neatly on the table, you're the famous Clara Matthew. Clara smiled professionally. I wouldn't say famous. But I'm glad to finally meet you. Haerin studied her openly, taking in her warmth, her quiet confidence, the way her eyes held both kindness and caution. Something unreadable flickered across Haerin's face. Sujin speaks highly of you, she said. Clara's fingers tightened slightly around her cup. He's very easy to work with. Pause. Yes, Haerin agreed. He always has been. As they discussed wedding details, Clara waited for enthusiasm, for opinions, preferences, excitement. It never came. I trust Sujin, Haerin said calmly when asked about flowers. The venue? Clara prompted. Whatever he chooses. The dress. Simple is fine. Each answer felt rehearsed, detached, as though Haerin were planning a business meeting rather than her wedding. Clara smiled through it, but unease settled quietly in her chest. Over the following weeks, Haerin became increasingly unavailable. Work emergency. Overseas meeting. Unexpected trip. It was always something. Which meant Clara and Sujin spent long hours together touring venues, sampling cakes, discussing colors and lighting. They laughed more than they should have. Sometimes they forgot they weren't a couple. You have good taste, Clara said one afternoon as they left a fitting appointment. Sujin smiled. I've had good guidance. She glanced at him. From your fiancé? His eyes held hers a moment too long. From you, he said. Her heart stuttered. At night, Clara found herself replaying their interactions, scolding herself for reading into things that weren't there. He's engaged, this is your job. But her instincts, sharp from years of dealing with people and emotions, told her something was off. One evening, as they finalized guest arrangements, Clara finally asked the question she'd been avoiding. Do you want this wedding? She asked quietly. Sujin didn't answer right away. I want what it represents, he said carefully. That's not the same thing, she replied. His jaw tightened. No. Meanwhile, Haerin watched from a distance. She saw the way Sujin's voice softened around Clara. The way Clara unconsciously leaned toward him. The way neither of them noticed the line slowly disappearing between planner and groom. Haerin sighed to herself. This will hurt her, she thought. But she had already agreed. And Sujin was determined. The first real crack came when Clara reviewed the guest list. Her breath caught when she saw the name at the top. Park Sujin and Clara Matthew. She blinked. Scrolled. Refreshed. The names disappeared, replaced by the correct pairing. A system error, she told herself. But the feeling lingered. Something was coming. And Clara Matthew, despite all her experience with love and lies, was walking straight toward it. The cake tasting was supposed to be simple. A neutral location. A neutral task. No emotions involved. That was what Clara told herself as she arranged the plates in the elegant tasting room, sunlight spilling through tall windows, illuminating rows of pristine white cakes. Sujin arrived alone. Again. She couldn't make it? Clara asked lightly, already knowing the answer. Work, he said. Urgent. Clara nodded, ignoring the familiar twinge in her chest. Let's begin. They sampled flavors in silence, at first vanilla bean, lemon lavender, dark chocolate with raspberry. Clara took notes, focused on textures and balance, on professionalism. "This one," Sujin said, pointing to a simple almond cake. "It feels honest." She looked up, surprised. "You don't want extravagant?" He shook his head. "I want something that feels real." Their fingers brushed as they reached for the same fork. Neither of them moved away immediately. The room felt suddenly smaller. "Do you ever miss it?" Sujin asked quietly. "Miss what?" "Believing without fear." Clara exhaled slowly. "Every day." She met his eyes, saw something unguarded there: longing, restraint, vulnerability. For a moment she forgot he was engaged. Forgot her rules. Forgot the past. Later, while reviewing accessories, Sujin picked up a delicate hairpiece. "This would suit you," he said without thinking. Clara froze. The words hung between them, dangerous, intimate. He cleared his throat quickly. "I mean your taste. You'd choose well." She smiled, but her heart raced. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay awake, replaying the day, his laugh, his honesty, the way he watched her when he thought she wasn't looking. "This is wrong," she told herself. Yet the thought of him marrying someone else made her chest ache in a way she couldn't explain. Across the city, Sujin stared at his ceiling, the taste of almond cake still lingering. This was getting harder. Too real. Too close. Outside, rain began to fall, tapping softly against the windows like a warning. Neither of them listened. Because both Clara Matthew and Sujin Park were beginning to taste a future that didn't belong to them. Or so they believed. Clara Matthew was supposed to be a professional. A wedding planner. Detached. Efficient. In control. And yet, every moment with Sujin Park made that impossible. It started subtly. In the floral showroom, as she compared blush peonies to ivory roses, her eyes kept drifting to him. Sujin stood nearby, discussing arrangements with the florist, but his attention never left her. "You know," he said softly, not looking at her, "these roses would suit you better." Clara's hands froze on the petals. "Excuse me?" He smiled faintly. "The softer ones match you." Elegant, understated, but unforgettable. Her pulse skipped. She cleared her throat. "I need to focus on the wedding." "I know," he replied. His voice trailed, and for a second the room felt heavy with unspoken words. Clara looked down at her notebook, scribbling notes she didn't read. Her heart thumped like a drum she couldn't silence. She tried to push herself harder. Professionalism became armor. During the cake tasting she refused to linger. During fittings she avoided eye contact. At every meeting she reminded herself, "He is engaged. He is my client. Nothing else matters." But Sujin refused to let boundaries go unnoticed. One late afternoon, after a long day of venue inspections, they sat together on the steps of a quiet courtyard. The sun was fading, painting the city gold and pink. "You shouldn't be doing this," Clara said finally, breaking the silence. "I mean this closeness. You're engaged. And I'm not supposed to feel this way." Sujin turned to her, his expression unreadable but intense. "Engaged?" His voice was calm, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "Clara, do you believe that?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" "About boundaries, about rules, about what's supposed to happen." He leaned back, letting the words settle. "Do you believe you can control your heart?" She laughed nervously, a brittle sound. "I will try." "Try harder," he said softly. "Or stop pretending." Clara's chest constricted. She wanted to argue, to run, to escape back into the safety of her professional distance. But she couldn't. Because when he looked at her that way, steady, patient, yet searching, she felt herself unraveling. She had survived betrayal. She had endured heartbreak. She had walked away from the man who broke her entirely. And yet Sujin made her feel things she thought were impossible. Over the next weeks, she found herself secretly hoping for delays, cancellations, anything to give her heart a reprieve. But Sujin seemed determined to bring her closer, to test her resolve, to challenge her restraint. During another planning session, she tried again. "You know, I think this wedding might be a mistake," she said, carefully neutral. "Sometimes love doesn't work out the way people imagine. Sometimes people change their minds." He looked at her, eyes calm, unwavering. "Or sometimes they wait for the right person." Clara froze. The words were soft, almost casual, but they hit like a lightning strike. She averted her gaze, feeling her chest tighten, her heartbeat accelerating. He leaned forward, close enough that she could see the faintest warmth in his eyes. "Do you know what's going to happen, Clara?" She shook her head, too stunned to speak. "Nothing you think." and nothing I pretend. But I promise you one thing. He let the words linger, heavy with intent. I won't let this pass us by. That night, Clara lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The rules she had lived by, control, distance, detachment, felt useless. Her heart was betraying her. Again. And she didn't know if she had the strength to stop it. Clara Matthew had seen dozens of wedding dresses in her career. She had guided brides through countless fittings, adjusted hems, inspected every bead, every fold of fabric. But nothing could have prepared her for this moment. The designer insisted she try on the dress herself, for reference. Clara protested, cheeks burning. I'm just the planner. It's not necessary. The designer waved her off. Please. It helps clients see how it flows. Reluctantly, Clara stepped into the ivory silk gown. The fabric hugged her curves, flowing softly to the floor, delicate embroidery catching the afternoon light streaming through the studio windows. The train pulled elegantly behind her, longer than anything she had imagined. When she emerged, she froze. Sujin had been inspecting accessories at a nearby table. The moment he looked up, the world seemed to narrow. His gaze traveled over her, slow and deliberate. She felt the quiet stillness, the subtle electricity in the air. You look, his voice faltered, rare for someone who rarely lost composure. Like my bride. Clara's breath caught. She looked down at herself, suddenly hyper-aware of every detail, the way the dress clung just enough, the gentle sway of silk, the blush creeping across her cheeks. It's just for demonstration, she murmured, trying to step back. No, he said softly. He rose, walking toward her. It's not just that. Don't pretend you don't see it. Her heart raced, pounding in her ears. Sujin. He held up a hand, stopping her words. I know this is complicated. I know it's wrong for now. But Clara, don't deny what's here. Don't deny it for me. Don't deny it for yourself. She swallowed hard, the professional distance she had fought so long to maintain crumbling. Sujin, you're engaged, she whispered. Her voice trembled despite herself. Yes, he said quietly, the single word carrying more weight than any argument. But Haerin is different. She understands the plan. She's part of this because it's necessary, but this, he gestured toward her, toward the air that seemed to vibrate with tension. This is real. And it's been real for years. Can you ignore it? Can you pretend it isn't here? Clara's chest tightened. She tried to speak again, but no words came. For the first time in years, she felt vulnerable, not weak, but exposed. Not afraid of heartbreak, but afraid of what she wanted. Sujin took a step closer, careful, respectful, yet impossible to ignore. You deserve honesty, he said softly. And I want you to have all of it. The room was silent, save for the soft rustle of silk and the faint hum of the city outside. Clara's fingers trembled at her sides. Her mind screamed caution, professional responsibility, and fear. But her heart recognized the truth, and it terrified her. The days following the dress fitting were charged with quiet electricity. Clara tried to bury herself in schedules, contracts, and floral arrangements. She told herself repeatedly, this is professional. This is your job. Nothing more. But Sujin made it impossible. He was everywhere, checking on progress, consulting vendors, offering subtle guidance. Always present, always attentive, always just himself. And every interaction chipped away at her defenses. Meanwhile, Haerin continued her absences. Business trip, she would text. Family emergency, she would explain. Deadline at the firm, she would insist. Each excuse left Clara alone with Sujin more often than not. They walked venues together. Tasted cakes. Debated linen colors. Sat through endless fittings. And with each shared laugh, each long conversation, Clara felt herself slipping into a dangerous familiarity. One evening, as they reviewed invitations in the quiet of Sujin's office, she tried to draw a line. I don't think this wedding should be happening, she said carefully, looking down at her notes. It seems forced. Maybe you should reconsider what you really want. Sujin's gaze didn't waver. I know exactly what I want, he said softly, leaning forward, eyes intense. And right now this isn't about anyone else. It's about what I feel. Clara's heart stuttered. She wanted to argue, to remind herself of Haerin, of professional boundaries, of everything that could go wrong. But she couldn't. Because even as she tried to push him away, she found herself drawn in. The next morning, Clara arrived at a flower workshop to find Sujin already waiting. Good morning, he said casually, but the way he looked at her made her stomach tighten. You're early, she replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I wanted to make sure everything was perfect, he said, gesturing to the blooms around them. I want this to feel like it matters. Like it's real. She froze for a moment. It's already real, she said softly, realizing that she wasn't just talking about the flowers. Sujin's lips curved faintly. Exactly. Later that afternoon, Clara's phone buzzed. A message from Heyrin. Sorry, I won't be able to make it today. Important meeting. Hope all goes well. Clara stared at the screen. She knew what it meant. Heyrin was playing her part. She was aware of Sujin's feelings, aware of the growing bond between Clara and him. And yet Heyrin remained distant, absent, the perfect fiancé, only in name. Clara tried to tell herself she was imagining it, that nothing had changed. But she couldn't ignore the truth. Every time Heyrin disappeared, every time she and Sujin were left alone, the tension between them grew. The quiet, unspoken electricity. The small glances. The way her heart began to beat faster, against all reason. And the more she tried to resist, the more impossible it became. That night, Clara sat by her window, the city lights shimmering below. Her thoughts were tangled. Professional duty, fear of heartbreak, the memories of betrayal, and the undeniable pull toward Sujin. Her hand brushed over the silver necklace her mother had given her when she left Chicago. Stay strong, her mother had said. Clara closed her eyes. For the first time in years, staying strong felt like a choice between duty and desire. And she wasn't sure which side she wanted to win. The city had a quiet glow that night, a soft haze of streetlights and distant neon reflecting in Clara's apartment window. She sat cross-legged on the floor, sketches, fabric swatches, and cake samples scattered around her. Her phone buzzed beside her. A message from Sujin. I need your advice. Urgent. Can you meet me? Clara's pulse quickened. She hesitated. Professional obligation? Or the undeniable pull she felt every time he called? She grabbed her coat. Sujin was waiting at a small rooftop cafe overlooking the Han River. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of rain. He stood as she approached, the evening light catching his sharp profile. You're late, he said, but there was a softness in his voice that made her stomach twist. I had to finish reviewing the linens, she replied, though her voice faltered. He nodded, gesturing to the small table. I need your opinion, but not about the wedding. Clara frowned. Not the wedding? No, he said, sliding into the chair across from her. About us. Her breath caught. She laughed nervously. Us. Yes, us. His dark eyes searched hers. Clara, I've spent years watching you, admiring you, respecting your boundaries. But I can't not anymore. Clara's heart pounded. She swallowed hard. Sujin. I'm engaged, he said, a shadow crossing his face. You know that. But Heyrin is part of the plan. She agreed. She understands. But you're not a plan. You're the part one can't ignore. Her hands trembled as she gripped her notebook. You're talking about me? I am, he said simply. I'm talking about how I feel. About how I felt for 3 years. About the fact that when you're around, everything else fades. And I'm done pretending that it doesn't matter. Clara's chest tightened. Her professional mask was slipping. Her rational mind screamed at her to step back, to resist. But her heart knew the truth. I feel the same. They sat in silence for a moment, the city buzzing quietly below, the river shimmering like molten gold. I shouldn't feel this way, Clara whispered. I've been hurt before. I can't. You can, Sujin said firmly. You can feel this, because this isn't just a fleeting thing. It's real. And it's us whether we like it or not. Her lips parted. She wanted to argue, to retreat, to run from the intensity, but words failed her. Instead, she reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. Sujin caught her hand, holding it gently. His eyes softened. Clara, don't fight it. Tears prickled at the corners of her eyes. Relief, fear, and longing collided. She realized she was ready to trust again, to feel again, to risk her heart. And for the first time since Evan, she allowed herself to imagine a future not just as a planner, but as someone loved wholly and fiercely. That night, Clara didn't sleep. She sat by her window, hands still tingling from Sujin's touch, heart pounding with the dangerous, thrilling realization. She was falling for him. And there was no turning back. Sujin Park sat in his office high above the city, the skyline glittering like a promise and a warning at the same time. Heyrin entered quietly, closing the door behind her. You're pushing her too close, she said, her voice low, measured. Sujin didn't look up immediately. She's already there, he replied. Closer than I expected. Heyrin studied him, a faint smile tugging at her lips. You planned this from the start. You always knew how she would react. Yes, Sujin admitted. But I didn't expect this. Not this intensity. Not this connection. And that's exactly why you can't be careless, Haerin said. Clara Matthew isn't just a planner. She's precise. She notices everything. Feels everything. Sujin's jaw tightened. I know. That's why I need to control the timing. I can't let her know yet. Not everything. Not the truth. Haerin nodded slowly. She suspects something. She's intelligent, he said quietly. But she trusts me. Or she wants to. Haerin leaned back, her fingers tracing the edge of the desk. You're treading a dangerous line. She could pull back at any moment. Or she could. I know, Sujin interrupted softly. And that's why this plan has to be perfect. Meanwhile, Clara was oblivious to the full scope of Sujin's strategy. She had noticed the little inconsistencies, the times Haerin suddenly became busy, the subtle tension between Sujin and the woman he called his fiancée, the way certain plans seemed orchestrated to leave her alone with him. She brushed it off as coincidence. Professional responsibility. Her own imagination. But sometimes late at night, a thought crept in. What if Haerin isn't who she says she is? What if Sujin's hiding more than he should? She dismissed it quickly. She couldn't risk overthinking. She had her own walls to maintain. Yet every moment spent with Sujin pulled at those walls. The gentle way he guided her through floral arrangements. The patience he showed as she navigated Korea's unfamiliar systems. The quiet admiration he gave when she solved a problem no one else could see. And the stolen glances, the small touches, the way his gaze lingered just a second too long. Clara tried to focus. But deep down she knew the truth. She was being pulled into something far bigger than a simple wedding. And Sujin. Sujin was playing a game she didn't even realize she was in. The more Clara fell into her professional rhythm, the more she trusted him, the more the line between business and personal blurred. By the time they finalized the cake flavors and table arrangements, Clara felt it unmistakably. Her heart was entangled. And she didn't know how to escape. Clara Matthew had always trusted her instincts. They had saved her countless times from clients hiding secrets, from weddings falling apart, from heartbreaks disguised as normal life. And now they screamed at her. It started with small things. The seating chart. Sujin insisted she review it meticulously, yet kept adjusting it in ways that seemed almost personal, placing certain guests together, leaving other seats intentionally empty. The bridal bouquet. Clara had chosen ivory and blush roses, but Sujin subtly insisted on a single red rose in the center. She wants a symbol of love, he said lightly, though there was a glimmer in his eyes that made her stomach twist. And then came the schedule for the rehearsal. Clara noticed that the time slots and order of events mirrored her own work from a wedding she had once planned in Chicago. A vague, unsettling memory nudged her mind. One afternoon, while reviewing the dress fittings, Clara caught sight of the digital display in Sujin's planning folder. The bride's name. It wasn't Haerin. It was Clara Matthew. Her chest froze. Her heart skipped a beat. She blinked. Refreshing the screen, checking the documents again. The name hadn't changed. She backed away, her mind spinning. This can't be right. Her thoughts raced memories of Evan, the betrayal she had escaped, the wounds she thought had healed. Could history really be repeating itself? Could she be walking into her own nightmare? Later she confronted Sujin. Why is my name on the documents? She asked, voice tight, trembling. He looked at her calmly, eyes soft but unwavering. Because you're the bride. The words hit her like a tidal wave. I don't understand, she stammered. You tricked me? All this time? No, he said quietly. I didn't trick you. I gave you the truth when the time was right. But I couldn't tell you until I knew you were safe, until I knew you could trust me. Clara's hands shook. Betrayal, confusion, and something dangerous hope tangled in her chest. You planned my wedding, she whispered. And I didn't even know. Yes, Sujin said softly. And now I hope you'll let me show you why. Her mind screamed at her. No, not again. Don't fall for it. Her heart didn't listen. That night, Clara lay in her apartment, sleepless. She thought of Evan, of Chicago, of the heartbreak that had driven her to Seoul. And now of Sujin. She realized, with a mixture of fear and longing, that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The planner had become the bride. And the man she had been falling for quietly for years was the only one who could save her heart or break it completely. The morning sunlight filtered softly through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Sujin Park's penthouse, casting the city of Seoul in a golden haze. Clara Matthew stood in front of the mirror, the ivory silk gown hugging her perfectly, delicate embroidery catching every glint of light. Her hands trembled slightly, not from nerves, but from the weight of what the day represented. Today she realized fully she was not just planning a wedding. She was living one. Outside, Sujin paced, sharp and precise as always, yet there was a subtle tension in his broad shoulders that Clara noticed as soon as he entered the room. "You're beautiful," he said quietly, stopping just short of her. His dark eyes held something raw, unguarded, that made her breath catch. Clara's lips parted, but she didn't speak. Words were impossible here. "I need you to know," Sujin continued, voice low but firm, "this was never about duty. Or appearances. Or anyone else." She met his gaze, her heart hammering. "Then why?" "Because I love you," he said simply, undeniably. "And I've loved you since the moment I met you. Since that first ride, when I watched you sleep in the back of that taxi I wasn't supposed to drive. You've been my world ever since." Tears blurred her vision. For years she had built walls around her heart, walls against betrayal, against pain, against love itself. And here he was tearing them down gently, piece by piece. "I've been so afraid," she whispered. "After Evan I swore I'd never trust again." He took her hands in his warmth grounding her. "You can trust me, Clara. I'm not him. I'll never hurt you. I'll never let you go." The ceremony began. Guests filled the elegant hall, unaware of the secret that had been carefully orchestrated behind the scenes. Haerin had stepped aside gracefully, her role complete, leaving Sujin and Clara to their truth. As Clara walked down the aisle, heart pounding, she saw Sujin standing at the altar, every detail perfect, every glance holding only her. It wasn't about appearances. It wasn't about duty. It was about love, real, unwavering, and meant to be. Sujin's hand reached for hers and she felt the world fall away, leaving only the two of them. "I promise," he whispered as they faced each other, "to love you every day. To protect you. To make up for every lost moment and heartbreak you endured. You're my only Clara Matthew. My bride. My forever." Her lips curved into a trembling smile. "I trust you," she whispered. "And I love you. Always." The vows were exchanged, rings slid onto fingers, and for the first time in years, Clara felt a completeness she never thought possible. The applause rang around them, but it was faint compared to the sound of their hearts beating together, in sync, in a rhythm that had waited years to be realized. And when Sujin leaned down, capturing her lips in a kiss filled with promise, relief, and infinite tenderness, Clara knew that happily ever after wasn't a fantasy. It was real. It was hers, and it had been worth every heartbreak, every fear, every step of the journey. The city of Seoul shimmered outside, unaware of the love story that had unfolded above its streets. Inside, Clara and Sujin shared their first private moment as husband and wife, their hearts finally aligned, the past healed, and the future bright with the promise of forever.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel. Click on the notification icon so that you will get notified whenever a new story is posted. Also leave us a like, comment, and share to others who love good stories.